All right, all. Thank you so much for joining us today. So our webinar today is focused on supporting students with dyslexia. As we go ahead with today's webinar, if you would like to follow along on a separate screen or a separate tab, please feel free to do so. You can go ahead to formative.com and go ahead and log in as normal. Again, you're able to log in with your Google, Clever, or Microsoft, or just enter in your email and username and password, whatever is easiest for you and however you log into your account. So a little bit about me. My name is Katie Gillett, and I am a Client Success Manager here with Formative. I am a former teacher. I've taught pre-K collaborative, kindergarten, special ed, and was also an RTI specialist, which did include providing some dyslexia supports for students. I am a dog mom. I do have 4 dogs. They will hopefully behave themselves today, but if you do hear barking, I apologize in advance. I was born and raised in the New England area, but I've lived all over, including New York, Florida, Texas, California, and now Colorado. Some things to know about today's session. This is being recorded, so the recording of this will be posted on our website later if you ever want to review things or have some friends who weren't able to attend but would like to see what was going on. We are scheduled for roughly 30 minutes. And if you have any questions, please just go ahead and pop them into the chat. So some of our learning objectives today, we're going to look at different accommodations that you can use, colored overlays and how to incorporate that into Formative, sections and chunking work for students, as well as some picture and audio supports that you can use. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I'm going to pop over to my Formative dashboard. So one of our amazing new features here at Formative is a time accommodations. As we know, some of those students with dyslexia, they really struggle with those reading questions and understanding what they're reading. So it takes them a bit longer than other students. A common accommodation on 504 and IEP plans is allowing these students to have extra time. So now you can do that easily with Formative. Under your classes tab, when you go ahead and look at your class, you've got all your students there. We now have this fun little accommodations button. You hit that I to uncover it. You can now set time accommodations for certain students. So if you know that this student needs some time accommodations, you can go ahead and set that in there. So this will show up anytime you assign a formative that does have a time limit on it. This student will automatically receive those extra time accommodations. This prevents you from having to go in and reassign a brand new formative or, assign it separately for this student. That time accommodation just automatically fits for them. The other way that you can add in some different accommodations for students is when you go in and you have your formative created. Sometimes you've got some students with some different needs. Maybe you need to give them less answer choices for a multiple choice question where instead of 4 answer options, they get 3. You can always create a copy of one of your formatives. So if I wanted to make a copy of this formative, I click on the side of it. I can copy it. I'll see it up here. And then I can go in and maybe edit some of those questions. So if I look at this multiple choice question, I only want there to be 3 answer choices for this student. So I'm going to click out of one of them. This one has far too many answer choices for my students. So again, I'm going to remove a few of them to make it a little more manageable. So it's the same exact formative, but you have now the ability to go in and edit some questions. And then when you go to assign it, click on your class, go to those adjust settings, and you can restrict it to individual students. This way, not all of your students are getting this modified assignment. If it's only student 1 and 11 that need that, they can they can be the ones that you only assign it for. The other accommodation feature that is great for all students, not just ones with dyslexia or other special needs, is adding in this separate page option. So displaying each item as a separate page. What this means is when students are going through their formative, instead of seeing that long list of questions and getting really overwhelmed by, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to keep scrolling, and what if I miss something? They will see each question individually, one at a time. And when they have finished answering question one, they'll hit that next button to move on to question two. It helps slow things down and make it a little less overwhelming for those students. So when we think about those students with dyslexia, a really common accommodation and support for them is colored overlays on text. You'll see those students when they're reading a book, like a physical book or a physical passage, they'll have those little strips with yellow or blue, whatever it may be, so they can go over that and really, really make sure that they pay attention to what they're reading and see what they're reading. There is a way to add that in to Formative. So if you go ahead and click on that plus new question button, I'm going to do a show your work question for this. No, all right. So let me go back over here. All right. The easiest way for me to show you what the single page view looks like is to just quickly assign this as a teacher pays mode. All right. So what students would see in that single page view is just like this. They would see one question, and then they would be able to hit the button, either the number 2 for the next question or the next for that next question. But it shows up one at a time instead of that typical long view. All right. So I'm going to go ahead back over. All right. So again, we went in, I added a show your work question type. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this edit background button. And then I am going to upload an image. So I've got some images here. I'm going to upload this one. It's a little reading passage. And now students can just read it as is like this, but those students that need that cover overlay, what you can do is over here where you have that line, you can choose your color. So if I'm going to pick blue, I'm going to change the opacity all the way down. And then I'm going to hit that fill shapes button. Okay. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hit my shapes, add a rectangle. And then I'm just going to draw a rectangle all the way over that. Hit that checkbox. So now when I preview that as a student, what students will see, they will be able to go to that show your work box, and they will be able to see that overlay on there. They can also, if it helps them, use their mouse and follow along so they can track that way. They can go in, and if they have certain things that they know that they really need to pay attention to, and this is one of the strategies they've been working on, they can go ahead and circle things. However they best need to work through this question, they are able to do that. You can also teach your students how to create that box on their own. Really great feature, allows for some flexibility with that students. All right. So continuing to think about ways that we can make our formatives a little more friendly for those students who maybe they have difficulties reading, dyslexia, any other struggles that they may have, is by chunking work, breaking it up into those smaller parts. So that way, again, they're not overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, I have all these questions. How am I going to get to them? So we now have the ability in a formative to add sections. So you can add a section. Maybe you want to say, begin work here. And then you add in a few questions, whatever they may be. I'm going to add in just a few random question types here. And then I'm going to put in another section. And this one, I'm going to title, Take a Break. So this is where students can know, okay, I got to these 4. Now I'm going to take a moment, recompose myself, refocus myself, whatever I need to do to get myself ready for the next set of questions. And then I, as a teacher, will go in, add in my questions that I need. And what students will see, they'll be able to see up here at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a line that breaks it out. So they've got those 3, 4 question types here. When they're ready, they can hit that next. They see that take a break reminder first before the next few questions. Sections can be used multiple ways. They can be used as reminders to take a break. They can be used as, just general chunking of your work. Okay, hey, this part we're going to focus on this story. Now we're going to focus on writing versus reading. However you feel it's best for you and your students to break up that assignment so it's not too overwhelming and your students feel successful. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a content block. I'm going to upload one of my documents. And again, since we're thinking about dyslexia here, that is a reading-focused issue and struggle that students may have, I'm going to add in a little reading passage with some questions here. And then I'm going to go ahead. It's got the questions already set, so I don't really need to retype them. But if I have those students who, again, they're struggling with that reading, when I go in and I turn those question types into a formative question type, so it'll auto grade, instead of just leaving those as A, B, C, and making those students go in and read all of that, I can go in and add in some audio support for both the question, where I can read that question aloud to students, as well as each answer option. My goal with this is to see if the student's able to read the passage. I don't want to confuse them with having to read and understand those questions. I want to make sure they understand what I'm asking them to find from the passage. So if reading those questions and answer choices aloud makes it a little bit easier and makes those students feel more successful, it's a small step for me to take as an educator. The other thing you can always do is you can add in images over here to these answer choices. Gives that extra support for your students. As we teach reading, we always tell our students, check the picture too. Make sure the picture matches the word. Make sure it makes sense. So you can add those images in as an additional support for your students. Another type of question that we have that is fantastic for students who are struggling with dyslexia is our audio response and video response question types. Many students who have dyslexia don't just struggle with reading. It is also writing and spelling that is difficult for them. So if you're asking a short answer question that requires these students to type out a response, you're going to have students who struggle. They're going to get overwhelmed with that, and they're going to be very frustrated with maybe they don't know how to form that sentence correctly when they're typing or writing. Maybe they're hung up on how do I spell this word? But you want to know if they understand the material. So you can add in an audio response or a video response question type where you're asking the question, maybe it's asking them to summarize the passage. But instead of, again, typing that response out and having to worry about forming their sentences correctly or spelling all these words correctly, they are able to just tell you. So once again, thinking about some of those interventions that are provided for students with dyslexia, a common tool used are those magnetic letter tiles and making those students manipulate those words. You start with the ending at and you put a C in front. Now what do you have? Now change that C to a B and having those students really manipulate those words. Well, sometimes that can be hard virtually because not all of your students may have their own set of letter tiles or magnetic letters. Or, maybe they just don't know how to do it with typing things. Maybe their handwriting is bad, so using that show your work is not going to work for these students. What you can do is you can use that embed feature to add in virtual manipulatives. So I'm going to add in some from toytheater.com. And I can move these in. I could start it out for a student. So maybe these are the letters that I want them to manipulate. And then I can give them directions over here. So I could just add in, maybe I just want to add in multiple choice, what happens when you put A between T, between B and T. And I could fill out my answer choices, but those students, what they would be able to do is they would be able to manipulate those letters as well. So they can move them around however they would like and physically be able to move those letters instead of it just having to write it out or type it out. That embed feature is an amazing way to add in your manipulatives, your resources that you would use in the classroom, but also do it virtually. So I would also like to remind you all, if you ever come across something that you are struggling with, you're not sure how it works, maybe it's a question type or whatever, this little question mark up here on your formative page, you can use that to bring you to our help center, where you will find tons of different articles about all our different question types, how to use something. If you're interested in that embed feature, if you search embed, there are a bunch of different articles that you can use for embedding different websites. If for whatever reason you are not finding the answer in any of these articles, please feel free to chat with our support team. You can use that little chat button right there. They are amazing at answering questions and getting back to people, and just they are wonderful with everything you would need to know. All right, so this entire webinar will be recorded and will be posted to our website. The way to go ahead in and show how to display questions one at a time is through that Assign tab. When you go ahead and click who you're going to assign it to, those adjust settings, the optional, you hit that display each item as a separate page, toggle that on, and it will show your students the questions one at a time and allow them to move through each question. If it is something where you would like to be the one guiding students through the question and hitting next as they finish, you can always use that teacher pace mode as well. Also under that little question mark is our training center. So this is where you will find all of the webinars, any upcoming ones, as well as the recordings, right? So all of those will get posted to our training center. All right, it doesn't seem like we have any other questions, so enjoy the rest of your day and thank you for attending.